Hey, it's Triple A, and welcome to Couldn't Scare Less. Today we're going to be discussing the very underrated, in my opinion, 2012 Blumhouse movie Would You Rather, directed by David Guy Levy. By underrated, I'm telling you that it has a 20 on Metacritic, 5.7 out of 10 on IMDB, and I wholeheartedly disagree with both of those. I would say it's a solid B, like an 8 out of 10, as it is an entry in the genre that is not trying to be torture porn. It's not super gnarly, gory kills that are supposed to go, whoa, dude, that's radical. This is a soul-shattering experience of a film, and it's beautiful. Primarily, in great part, due to its incredible villain, played by Jeffrey Combs. I'll nerd out about Jeffrey Combs in a little bit. But, like The Mist, I recommend you go into it unspoiled if you can handle it. It's much less gory than things like Saw, Squid Game. It's more gory than Countdown, but that's not saying anything. I'll go over the Does the Dog Die trigger warnings. If this sounds like a movie you can handle, I recommend it. But it does have some specific hang-ups for people, and I totally understand that. These are the Does the Dog Die trigger warnings. Lots of talking of addiction, specifically alcoholism, drug use, specifically an overdose, alcohol abuse, physical restraining, cutting with a razor, threatened teeth damage, specifically threatened teeth removal. There is a near amputation by firecracker, finger-toe mutilation, specifically fingers by firecracker, eye mutilation not shown on screen. It cuts away immediately, but it's there, and that thing hangs for a little while. 2 people are forcibly held underwater. There is a seizure. There is torture. There is death of a child, both one mentioned and one shown near the end of the film. A parent dies. There are not jump scares. I disagree with Does the Dog Die on this one. There is a scene in a shower with no nudity. There is one instance of spitting in reference to being tased. It's unnoticeable. Ice pick is used, but no needles or syringes. There is not electrotherapy, but there are several instances of electrocution. Lots of discussion of cancer, especially near the beginning. You could make the argument that this contains self-harm, as these people are being forced to hurt each other, or occasionally themselves. There is death by suicide. There is brief mentioning of PTSD, doesn't stick around long, and it's pretty glossed over, as someone with PTSD. The first on-screen death is a white person. However, the only 2 black characters do die in less great ways. But it's kind of an equal death opportunity kind of movie. So it's not one of those. It's not one of those that you might think from the trigger warning on Does the Dog Die. There is attempted rape and sexual assault. Nothing shown on screen. It doesn't last. It lasts for about, the scene itself lasts for about 30 seconds. Definitely a sad ending of a film. There is gun violence, there is blood and gore, and there is drowning. That is the Does the Dog Die trigger warning read off. A lot of ones on this. But if you can handle that, there were some spoilers in there, as always with trigger warnings. I recommend it. And let's get into the plot synopsis. We open on the film with the all too relatable struggle of trying to find a job, where it seems that no amount of experience is ever enough. If you don't have a bunch of experience in the very specific thing they want, you're probably going to get passed up. In this case, our protagonist, is looking to apply to be just a waiter or hostess. And her job interview doesn't seem to be going great. But right after that, we get our opening credits, which are over top of an x-ray of the human body. It feels very Final Destination, with a much tamer, less kick-ass kind of music to it, but visually it has that same kind of credit crawl vibe. After which we cut to Iris, our protagonist, going through a table of medical bills before telling her brother that she has a meeting at her brother's clinic to try and cut some of the costs for the movie. Not for the movie, to cut some of his medical costs, but this movie has a lot of money talk, again. One funny thing about trying to record these scripts with Diplopia is I struggle to read, so sometimes I misread my own scripts in funny ways. But, an interesting note here is, if you've seen this movie already, with Iris walking into the clinic here, you actually see one of the future people in the death game, this lady in a wheelchair. We'll see her later as one of the competitors. I didn't notice that till this watch through. But Iris goes to the clinic and meets with a Dr. Barden, who introduces her to a rich guy named Shepard Lambrick, played by the legendary Jeffrey frickin' Combs. I am a big fan of Jeffrey Combs. He kills it in this role in particular. I'm pulling up his IMDb in the background just to properly share how much of a horror legend this guy is. Most well known for being Herbert West in Reanimator 1, 2, and 3. He's Milton Dammers in The Frighteners. He's Shepard Lambrick in this. He's Crawford Tillinghast in From Beyond. His IMDb has 143 acting credits. And he's in a lot. He does a lot of voice acting too. He voices the leader in Avengers Mightiest Heroes. He also voices the parody of H.P. Lovecraft in Scooby-Doo Mysteries Incorporated, H.P. Hatecraft, which I find very funny, as that's obviously a joke on the fact that Lovecraft was kind of a racist. Okay, majorly racist. Yeah, he's been in a lot, and I freaking love him. He's probably my favorite horror character actor. All of his roles have this incredible sense of genuinity to them, where his characters feel very strongly self-justified. Specifically Herbert West and Shepard Lambrick, the two roles of his I'm most familiar with. And Shepard in this film is splendidly wicked. And I honestly think he's one of the most underrated horror villains. I see him up there with, I see him as almost an improved Jigsaw, because I've never really been big on Jigsaw, just because he's has a self-righteousness to him that he can't quite connect to. Because Jigsaw's whole thing is he's like, I don't kill people, I'm not a murderer. But he does. He will just straight up murder people. Shepard is different. Shepard doesn't ever claim to be something he's not. But he feels so self-justified in what he does, because he feels that only the people who are truly worth helping should be helped. And that kind of self-justified darkness makes for a very good villain here. He probably helps improve this next 90 minutes of film into making it, my favorite death game horror film. Anyways, that's the Jeffrey Combs bit done for now. Shepard tells Iris that she's invited to a dinner party with other people in need, and that she'll need to win a game at said dinner to receive the help of the Lambrick Foundation, which he makes sure to... Dr. Barden, tells us about all the hospitals and schools the Lambrick Foundation has already built, but that's obviously to cover up some of the detestable acts we'll see later in this film. She's wary of it initially, but it's revealed to her that Barden won one of Shepard's games after the loss of his wife and falling on hard financial times, and that's how he's a doctor now, apparently. And that's enough to later dissuade Iris. She goes home, makes dinner for her brother. She gets a call finding out she did not get the job at the restaurant. and fishes out Shepard's card that she'd thrown away in the wastebasket off screen. We get an oddly intercut conversation here, where it weirdly intercuts to a past conversation between Iris and Raleigh, her brother, that she needs to let go. Not specifically of him, but to let go in general. It's a weird. This seems to be in reference to them not finding a bone marrow transplant match previously. This movie has some weird editing choices, and they're mostly in this first 30 minutes. But she makes the call, and she goes to tell her brother that she's going out with some high school friends tonight, and that he assures her he'll be okay without her for the night. He could use the quiet, the chill, and play video games. We get some very pretty, albeit creepy, contextually music here, as Iris gets ready and is picked up by a fancy chauffeur, and is taken to the house. On her way there, we get another oddly intercut discussion between Iris and Raleigh, where Iris says that she doesn't want a life. She wants to help her brother get through this stage of his life so he can live a life. But Raleigh very much wants her to have her own life separate from him, separate from what he's going through. Not my favorite editing choices, but I guess they kind of want to flesh out Raleigh and Iris before everything kicks off. She enters the house, quickly learns it's not actually a house, it's just like it's a house that no one lives in. They just use it for these kind of events, and learns she is the 8th and final competitor to arrive. And now that we are going to be meeting all 8 of our competitors for this film, I'll go through their acting credits and who they are. Iris is played by Brittany Snow, who plays Chloe in Pitch Perfect 1, 2, and 3. She's also in Hairspray, as well as in 2022's X, which I've not seen yet, but I've heard very good things. We have Lucas, played by Envar Gojakaj. He's primarily a TV actor, starring in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Resident Alien, The Rookie, and NCIS Hawaii. We have Cal, played by Eddie Steeples. From the guest book, also Tyler in Raising Hope, and Darnell in My Name is Earl. We also hear about a gambler named Peter, played by Rob Wells of Trailer Park Boys fame. Linda, who was in the wheelchair earlier in the clinics, played by June Squibb, of Nebraska, In and Out, and Palm Springs. Those were the only things on her very long IMDb I'd heard of. We also have Travis, who is an Iraq war veteran, played by Charlie Hoffheimer. He was in Black Hawk Down, 24 Legacy, Mad Men. It was also Jim Garland and Lassie. We have Amy, played by Sasha Grey, who was the DJ in Into the Dark, The Body. She's a DJ IRL. She wrote Consequences of Love for the Mission Impossible Fallout soundtrack. But other than that, according to IMDb, is, quote, one of the most notorious adult film stars in recent history, but with a no-regrets attitude. That's a direct quote from the IMDb. I don't know who wrote that, but that's Sasha Grey, apparently. And we have Conway, who is a skeptic, played by John Hurd, of Big, Home Alone, Sharknado, and a crap ton of other stuff. He's in everything. We learned that some of these people were brought from quite a ways for this game. Cal is from Seattle, and Lucas is from Iowa. I assume this is so that it's less likely that the competitors could know each other. And also, I assume it would be quite hard to find people with so few strings that they could be in something like this, die, disappear, and not have too many people asking questions about it. I do find it funny that Conway has conspiracy theories about the Lambrick Foundation, though is still here. It actually makes me think that he probably exists as someone Shepard wants to kill off, rather than someone he primarily intends to help. And if he wins, great, then one of his skeptics is in his pocket. But we get another weird, but I guess kind of cool-ish editing, where we are introduced to our side plot as Iris, Cal, and Lucas clink their glasses together. Iris drops hers for some reason, and that glass-shattering noise cuts directly into Dr. Barden putting ice in a drink to drink away some of his post-game pains, though primarily his guilt over giving Iris over to Shepard. Barden is played by Lawrence Gilder Jr., and he plays his part well, though I'm not super fond of his ultimately useless B-plot, though I know it exists so that the audience has some kind of reprieve from the hopeless despair of Shepard's game. And while Case Barden quiets his conscience with scotch, we cut back to Shepard, who is excitingly getting ready for the dinner while discussing the night to come with his nasty son Julian, played by Robin Lloyd Taylor, best well known as Penguin in Gotham, although he's also in John Wick 3, I do believe. He just kind of wants to get the game over with, whereas Shepard respects the process and integrity of the game, and that they must remain objective observers, but to never lay a hand on or incite any violence themselves. That's the Lambrick way, I suppose. Apparently Julian did something to disturb the integrity of last year's game, which his father reprimands him for. I honestly would have been fine with this becoming a series akin to Saw. I couldn't find any information on how much money it made, as it only appeared in very, very limited theaters, then was straight to streaming. But I'd be interested in seeing, like, the next game or the past game, perhaps, because this formula, and the directorial focuses of where it focuses more on the emotion rather than the gore, is quite appealing to me. Anyways, back on track. Before entry to the dining room, the players have to give up their phones and keys as to have a level playing field, obviously. Then as they walk in, we get some very good thriller kind of music, not the Michael Jackson, the film genre, as our future victims take their seats around a fancy wooden table. Nice detail here I noticed. Conway checks the walls and notices that the curtains only cover some ornate wooden walls, rather than any windows for possible escape. I thought that was a interesting note from his very paranoid character. Julian and Shepard then make their entrance and introduce the players to their head butler, Blevins. Bevins. There's a character who mispronounces his name the whole time, which threw off me writing the script because I didn't know who was saying it correctly. If Shepard was saying it wrong and this character was saying it correctly, or vice versa. Head butler Bevins brings in food and wine for the unfortunate 8. I don't remember what the food is that Bevins says all fancifully, but it's basically a super fancy steak and potatoes. I believe frog gras? I don't know food. I'm not a cook. I'm not a chef. I'm not rich. I can't afford nice food like that. But we learn, oh no, Iris is a vegetarian. Julian has like a little cut-off chortle. He's perfectly nasty as well. I gotta give Julian some props for being different from Shepard. I'm not thrilled with what he'll do later. I think it's needless. But Shepard sees this as an opportunity to break his guest down a little bit before any blood is drawn by the game, and takes the opportunity to award some money to Iris for breaking her vegetarianism. She's been a vegetarian for like 20 years, and is very strong in her resistance at first. But then Shepard offers her $5,000, and then quickly ups it to $10,000 to just take a bite of the steak and the foie gras on her plate. Linda encourages her to just close her eyes and take a bite or two. She really needs that money. And we're only 24 minutes into this, and we already see the nastiness of Shepard Lambrick. He sees his money as a way to break boundaries and reservations of the people in need around him to determine who is most worth his time to him, who he thinks he can manipulate and use the most with that money he has. His torment of his guest's ideals doesn't stop there, when he notices that Conway hasn't touched his wine, and we learn that he is a recovering alcoholic 16 years clean. And he says his abandoning of alcohol turned his life around. Shepard laughs in his face and reveals that Conway is in fact in crippling debt and has some kind of serious health issue, which obviously strikes a nerve with Conway, him airing out his issues to the whole table. But this scene is wonderfully awful. I can't include it, like audio-wise, but Jeffrey Combs just plays Shepard with such incredible beguile and He offers $10,000 to Conway to drink the glass of wine. Conway firmly refuses, saying how hard he has worked to get where he is, and denies the notion to Shepard that even though drinking ruined his life, that drinking could now save it. But Shepard then increases the payment to $50,000 for drinking a whole decanter of super fancy scotch. Conway tries to stay firm, but his eyes tell us just how much he needs this stack of money. So with tears in his eyes and a kind of a shrug, Conway picks up the decanter and starts drinking away at it, as Shepard laughs his quiet, maniacal laugh as we see Conway tip his head back, the alcoholism replaying in his mind as he's had the first taste of alcohol in 16 years, after trying and fighting so hard to stay away from the very strong addiction that can come from alcohol. And with that, our game is officially started. Our villain explains that it's just the children's game of Would You Rather, with a serious twist, of course, where neither option is good, and that they must act upon what they choose or else be eliminated. Cal asks a great question. Isn't Shepard capable of helping everyone there? Of course he can. But he gives some kind of bullcrap about how the game shows him who is strongest and who deserves his help the most. And that he doesn't want to just give handouts. He wants to make sure that people who are being helped fight for that help and deserve it. Shepard has a whole big thing about deserving what you get, a lack of entitlement, even though he's incredibly entitled. It's great. It's awful. You could dissect the heck out of this villain. I love it. He gives an opportunity for anyone to leave if they would like to leave. Conway stands up with his $50K in hand, though he kind of taps it back on the table and sits back down in the hopes of earning more money. Though it's possible he's just kind of too hammered at this point because he has now finished that whole decanter. John Hurd's a big man. I don't know how he'd be feeling after drinking a whole decanter of scotch. With a call of go, Bevins wheels in modified car batteries and reveals he's a former MI5 interrogator. With that, Conway now tries to leave, saying he didn't sign up for this, they can't do this to him, and then Conway takes a step forward and Bevins whips out a pistol, shoots Conway in the face. It's not very bloody, but it's this movie's violent turning point, and it's perfect in how stunning and sudden a turning point in a horror movie should be like this. The music rips out. You get kind of that ear ringy, the tinnitus noise sometimes you get added in these kind of films for these kind of big moments. And it's perfect. Perfectly jarring. I remember the first time I watched it, jumping a little bit. I guess you could call this a jump scare. The first game is simple. They can either shock themselves with the car batteries or shock the person next to you. So, Cal, would you rather? Cal is asked if he would rather shock himself or shock Amy. Cal shocks himself. Amy then shocks Linda, rather than shocking herself, before Shepard even finishes asking the question. Amy, played by Sasha Grey, is very adamant that her mindset is that they're competing against all of each other and there's no point in being nice about it. Linda shocks Peter to spare herself a second shock, as her first shock was so intense on her older body. And then after that, we cut from the shocking to see the doctor grabbing a revolver, getting into his car, and driving away from his home. We get these intercuts of what the doctor's doing to kind of give us some depravity from the game, which I'm not fond of the scenes. I understand why they're there, though. We skip Peter's turn as it happens off screen. Travis then shocks Lucas, and then Lucas tells Iris to shock him on his turn. That he'll shock himself, so that Iris can shock herself, so they don't have to shock Cale twice. Lucas wants to get them all out of there by working together, in opposition to Shepard, not agreeing with Amy's plan to do everyone for themselves and how Shepard wants it. We end the shock circle, no casualties. One thing I will add here is that the reactions to the electrocutions are genuine for Cal's actor, as he allowed himself to get tasered beforehand, so that way he would actually know how to act when he got electrocuted, which I thought was brave and unnecessary. Our 7 survivors, sorry John, are given a few minutes break while the second round is prepared, wherein we see Dr. Barden has driven to the house where they are. The Barden scenes are really short. I don't really think they're needed. I prefer seeing the scenes like Julian coming in and taunting the 7 survivors, saying how they chose to be here, but in such a classist deadlock of money, where you get money for life or you die if you refuse. Is there really any choice? I think that was a good thing that James A. Janice covered in the kill count for Would You Rather. Julian's dialogue here is a bit too on the nose for me. It would fit a whole lot better in something like The Purge, honestly. Him calling them pigs. Travis does not take kindly to being called a pig. And Julian decides to make an example out of Travis by having him be the main sufferer for our second round, stab or sjambak. A sjambak is a whipping staff primarily used for cattle, but in this case it's going to be used on people. Julian has the staff put plastic sheeting around the room, very American Psycho style, and we then have a quick cut to the doctor sneaking into the fancy house through a vent of some sort. I feel obligated to update you on these 60-second scenes just so you're aware that that side plot is still happening in movie time. But with that, we get to round 2. Iris is first, with the option to stab Lucas in the thigh with an ice pick, or to whip Travis thrice with the sjambak. She whips Travis, but the movie doesn't show us the gory details of the strikes and the ripping up of the skin that would happen from something like that, because the director here, David Guy Levy, did not want this to be like the torture porn sort of movies. He didn't want this to be a Saw. He didn't want it to be a Hostel. He especially didn't want it to be like Hostel for a scene later, even though there are similarities between the movies. Lucas is up next with the choice to stab Iris or whip Travis again 3 times. The unfairness here is, obviously the rich make the world awful for the poor trying to escape poverty, and how unfair it is. Welcome to classism as analyzed by horror. Julian smiles creepily as we watch the vet get beaten thrice again. And his smile is really unsettling. And Travis is looking bad by the time it comes to his turn, where he has to either stab Lucas or take 3 strikes from Bevins. Lucas begs Travis to stab him to save his own life, but Travis refuses, makes his decision, bites down on his tie, as the ex-spy beats Travis to the point of seeing a very bloodied shirt with the lash wounds. This is the only gore we get from this film, and I really applaud their restraint, and it's more of a, this is fricked up, rather than, yo, look how fricked up this is. Shepard makes a gloating joke about how it's just like life, isn't it? There's no do-overs. When Lucas begs Travis to undo his choice and stab him instead. But on Peter's turn, the gambler reasons that Travis would die in 3 lashings time. And his other option is to stab Linda in the leg with an ice pick. But Linda's paralyzed from the waist down, so she wouldn't feel the pain of being stabbed. Peter and Linda talk it through, and she reluctantly agrees to the stab in hopes of, just don't hit the artery. And he hits the artery, and blood bubbles like a freshly opened and shaken soda. This is the other gore we get here, with just some dark red blood coming out of her leg. Linda's turn comes up while they're trying to tourniquet her with a belt. She takes a stab at Amy. Amy elbows her in the face. Apparently Linda just scratched her. She didn't actually get the stab in, probably because she's, losing a lot of blood. It's not doing so hot. Shepard laughs his kind of laugh in this scene. Yeah, it's great. Since Amy has been so bloodthirsty, Shepard decides to reward her and let her stab any player of her choice on her turn. And she chooses to ice pick Amy. Not Amy, her name's Amy. Amy chooses to ice pick the side of Iris. and gets in just below the lung. Though because of movie reasons, she's pretty fine for the rest of this movie. This stab does really not inhibit her physically throughout the rest of this. But Amy is basically painted as a secondary antagonist, even though she's just someone who is willing to fight for her seat at the table of the rich. It's an understandable decision to make in this kind of life or death game, and it's how you survive this kind of thing. But you could draw parallels between Amy and our protagonist from Mayhem, where, being rich takes a lot of fighting and a lot of nasty decisions. But is it worth it or is it not? It's up to you. We then cut back to our B story to see that the doctor snuck in through a vent into the derelict-looking basement. We now see him walking through the basement with his gun, looking for the group. The butler checks after Amy's turn, and Travis is still bleeding, wherein Linda has stopped breathing as a result of her thigh wound and is wheeled away. Shepard rejoices in Peter's heartbreak as Cal's given the turn to strike the barely alive Travis or to stab Lucas. Lucas is down with being stabbed, but Cal takes the staff, and Iris starts crying at his choice. Lucas calls him a murderer. But looking at Travis, 3 more strikes isn't going to separate him from life or death anymore at this point, in my opinion. Travis is removed from the game after the strikes, as he's no longer conscious, barely alive, and is dragged away to bleed out elsewhere. Cal is starting to come around to the idea that maybe they have to play the game Shepard's way. As he sits back down after what he has had to do, the guards get ready for round 3. And the players quickly exchange whispers, and with a call of now, all the players, minus Amy, make a run for safety. Peter and Julian get into a fistfight. Iris stabs a guard in the arm with the ice pick and runs away, at the beckoning of Peter to get out of there. Cal beats a guard to the ground with a sjambak, and prepares to take the sjambak to Shepard to brutalize this Colosseum Caesar, before he is suddenly shot down with a quick flourishly drawn gun, and the insurrection's quickly put down with another shocking gunshot. It's a really good second twist scene, I will say. I think it's played off well, and it punctuates the lack of hope this movie will have for its survivors. Bevins and Julian go to retrieve Iris, and Shepard forces the players back to their seats at gunpoint. Iris is fleeing through the mansion, looking for any unlocked door, while avoiding Bevins, in some great shots that remind me of Ready or Not. Love that movie, by the way. Julian whistles while he's looking for her, with some creepy glee. Bevins is checking upstairs, while Julian roams the halls downstairs. Iris finds the vent that Dr. Bevins came through, and it's kind of partially open, but then Julian finds her, jumps on her, wrestles to the ground. She starts to scream. Both Case and Bevins hear the screams as Julian starts to sexually assault her. This is the one scene that doesn't sit great with me. It doesn't last long, it's about 30 seconds, but I do not like it. He calls her a pig, saying no one would believe her. Iris quickly stabs him in the leg, and I think also in the crotch. She does 2 stabbing motions. We see that in his leg later. I think the second blow is at the crotch, but yeah. But the doctor whips around the corner with his gun, saying, "I'm here to get you out of here, Iris." And then Bevins shoots him in the side of the head, ending his useless side plot as Iris is dragged back to the game, and Julian is taken upstairs to, I don't think they let him bleed out, but they let him suffer for a bit for what he did. Iris comes back and learns of Cal's death, and our 4 remaining players learn that leaving without winning just isn't going to happen. And Iris has decided that she's in for the long haul. She's gonna survive. She's gonna make it out of there. Shepard apologizes to Iris for her son's interference, and a scene that adds to him as a villain for me is I truly think Shepard thinks he's a good person, in spite of what he's done. He thinks that something separates him and worse people in his eyes, like Julian, where Shepard helps people in his own sadistic kind of way, and I think that makes him think he is a quote-unquote good person in some twisted form of the way. And I like that. But he's about to do worse than what we've seen prior as we entered the game. It's third round. The known and the unknown. All the players are given a sealed envelope and are shown a big old barrel of water. They can either be held face down in the barrel of water for 2 minutes, the known, or do whatever their card has in store for them, the unknown. Peter is up first, and given his history, he gives a quick rundown of his studies of patterns and psychology, and opens the envelope saying it's the obvious choice. And he sees a picture of a firework. He just had to light off a firecracker in his hand. He's safe, he thinks, until they pull out the firecracker, which is in fact a quarter stick of dynamite. And Lucas tries to give him some advice, just like to fake it out by letting it go near the end so it doesn't blow off his hand. Shepard doesn't like that idea and has Bevins duct tape the quarter stick into Peter's hand. Maybe it's a dud, Shepard jokes, as he lights the fuse, kind of looks away as it goes down, sighs relief when it doesn't explode immediately. And then after a second, boom, as his hands blasted off into many little pieces that you can't see on screen. Again, this isn't Hostel, this isn't Saw. They're not going to show you a hand blown apart. But his hand is blown apart. Peter falls over, kind of has a little seizure as he dies of a heart attack from the shock and the pain. Lucas gets his turn with 3 alive. He doesn't think he can survive the water, so he too takes the card. His card reveals a picture of an eye. If you've seen this movie's poster, which you have if you're watching on the YouTube version, as the background for this, you can probably tell what's about to happen here. Lucas has to slit his eye open with a razor blade, or get shot in the back of the head. This isn't Hostel. We're not going to see an eye be cut on screen in half. But Lucas cries out and yells at Shepard. But ultimately, as his 30 seconds comes closer, he does slit his left eye with a second to spare. We don't see any eye gore on screen, which I'm grateful for. But Iris's turn feels like an easy choice now, as taking the barrel after seeing the two gamble before her and lose, she decides she'd take the known rather than the unknown. Personally, in Lucas's position, that seems like an easy choice. But granted, I have an eye that doesn't really do anything. And I wear an eye patch. So me slitting my eye with a razor seems like an easy choice to me, because I have an eye I hate having in my head that doesn't really do anything. But I'm a weird case, admittedly. So Lucas is struggling with either dying or cutting himself with a razor. Seems like a weird choice to me personally, but I assume to others that would be an undoable thing. I understand that much. The next few minutes of the movie time are, as you figure, Iris being held underwater by Bevins. Her life flashes before her eyes, and she struggles, but brings back to her mind a discussion of Rally's nightmares, a recurring nightmare, of Iris drowning to death on some kind of, yacht or cruise boat. She struggles and flails around a little bit, but she does ultimately survive with a big old gasp. Good job. Considering she also got stabbed in the side. I don't know how she managed to do that with a stab wound, but she did. But during this round, we can notice that Amy hasn't been her antagonistic, spite, quippy self. And looks scared and has a 1,000-yard stare in her eyes. Sorry, scared and stare are hard to say next to each other. That makes them both sound weird. But it's probably because we learned that her husband drowned Amy's baby girl to death sometime prior, and that's part of why Amy's character is where she is right now. With shaky hands, she opens up her card to see that it's a number 4 on the barrel, learning she has to spend 4 minutes underwater. With a teary sentiment of her growing out saying, "Beggars can't be choosers," she steps up to the barrel and is plunged down into it while taking her preparatory breath and dies after less than a minute. The sound work on this death is kind of horrific. With her shoes squeaking on the plastic floors, we hear her bubbling to breathe, but ultimately going limp and being thrown aside. It's intense. And then there were 2. We have 10 minutes of movie left, and our 2 survivors sit opposite one another as Shepard coons on how difficult the evening has been for them, and how he'd be happy with either winner. And since this final round has a distinct advantage to whomever goes first, they flip a coin, and because it's a movie, it is in favor of Iris. The final round is simple. She can leave with Lucas and her both alive, but empty-handed. I assume not even the $10,000 she got from eating the steak. Or she can take an antique dueling pistol that has been placed in her hand and shoot Lucas in the chest to be victorious and to arrange the surgery that will save her brother's life. This ultimately, I think, is the hardest choice in this film. She's already suffered. She's already had to do unspeakable things in her eyes. And she's seen things she'll never be able to unsee. But to Lucas, this choice is obviously simple. They can go and be free. They don't need Lambrick's money. Or do they? Because Iris isn't talking. She's kind of not looking at him. To try and dissuade her, Lucas starts telling her about why he came. He's in a very similar situation to her, in that he has 3 sisters. Bang! Iris shoots Lucas in the chest, killing him instantly. He kind of flops to the table a little bit, bloody, as Shepard and Bevins stand and applaud her victory, as she sobs in her hands about what she has had to do to save her brother. Shepard gives her a duffel bag full of money that's enough to cover her family's debt and enough to pay for her entire college tuition so she can get an education. And that he scheduled a donor, bone marrow, for her brother's leukemia that very week. Of course, she can't leave without saying thank you. Shepard is a wonderfully maniacal villain, giving her this bag of money, hope, but at the exchange of her having to take another poor person's life, and her feeling eternally indebted to this monster. She comes home in the early hours of the morning with the bag of money, but Raleigh is still laying there asleep. She decides not to wake him, gets a shower, and changes out of her bloody clothes. Again, no recognition of her stab wound here. Freshly showered and dried off, she goes to tell Raleigh the good news. She tries to shake him awake, only to see him limp and unresponsive. On the bed next to him are his empty pill bottles. Death by overdose. All that money, all that torment, all the guilt she'll still have to live with, all while trying to make a life for her brother and herself, has been wasted. Depressing, I know. And that is 2012's Would You Rather. A movie about the poor being kept in competition by the rich, about the flawed idea that beggars can't be choosers, and Shepard Lambrick being one of the most detestable, vile villains in film. And I frickin' love him, because he is a very real villain. He is not quite literally how billionaires are that I know of. I don't know any billionaires that are running secret death games. But they make decisions with that kind of size of suffering on the regular. And I could probably talk about a whole thing about Shepard Lambrick and how he's just a very realistic villain. But I shan't, as I'm running close to time. But maybe we'll have a Jeffrey Combs discussion episode in the future. Or, maybe I'll bring someone else on who has a favorite villain, and we'll talk villain versus villain Shepard Lambrick towards someone similar to him, maybe Jigsaw. Thank you for voting on this episode over on Twitter. That is at FearlessPod. Next week, we will be taking a look at the new Candyman film, which there will be a watch together on my Twitch page. So be sure to follow that at ItsAAYE on Twitter, my main account, and then on Twitch, twitch.tv/ItsAAGaming. See you there.